Hello and welcome to Realpolitik Confidential After Hours. Good evening. This is our very first video episode, a space for the thoughts that keep us up at night. Not just breaking news, not the usual bullet points, just questions too heavy for daytime talks. Tonight's point of departure is not in Beijing, it's not in Washington, neither is it in Gaza. It's a quote, one that has systematically haunted me since my first year of university. Solitary, poor, nasty, brutish and short. You recognize it. It's Thomas Hobbes, the Leviathan, 1651. A raw description of human life in a world without order, a world before the state, before institutions, before the thin layer of civilization and of its rules, which we now take for granted. That layer, my friends, is thinning again rapidly and exponentially. We live in what is often described as the most stable era in human history. There are no world wars, at least not in the traditional sense, at least not yet. The greatest powers haven't clashed directly in over 7 decades. We have nuclear deterrence, a global rules-based international order, albeit increasingly diluted, ignored, and disintegrated. We have institutions that were meant to prevent the very chaos our grandparents endured, now castrated husks of what they used to be. The United Nations, the European Union, the World Trade Organization, treaties, summits, frameworks, all carefully designed to tame power and make history less violent. We have the language of peace, the architecture of cooperation, the optics of unity, but beneath this glossy surface, the cracks have widened. Geopolitics is no longer something confined to the halls of academia or the footnotes of history books. It's back, and it's raw, and it's vulgar, and it's relentless. From the Black Sea to the Taiwan Strait, from Gaza to the Sahel, hard power is once again the currency of survival. We no longer live in a world of the rule of international law, but the rule of international, sheer, unadulterated power, where might makes right. Conflict is no longer theoretical. It is televised, streamed, normalized. There are wars we forget while they're still being fought, and border tensions we ignore until they explode in our collective faces. But above all, what has returned, quietly, corrosively, is doubt. Doubt in the systems we built, doubt in the values we claim to defend, doubt in democracy's ability to deliver order, doubt in globalism's promise to raise all boats, doubt in our economic system which created a managerial class and forgot about everybody else, doubt in our institutions, in our leaders, in one another, doubt in ourselves. We no longer trust our neighbors, we no longer trust our media, we no longer trust our currencies or the vote, nor the facts it's based on. We live in an age of informational overload but fundamental emotional emptiness, of interconnectivity without cohesion. We're more informed and less certain than ever. The stability we speak of is real but fragile. It's a ceiling held by threads, not a foundation carved in stone. And the more we pretend is unshakable, the less prepared we are for the moment it finally gives way. So, if the illusion of stability is cracking, what's holding the world back from plunging into a full-scale collapse? The answer, my dear listeners, is frustrating, and here at Realpolitik Confidential we specialize in frustrating answers that are not simple, clear-cut, or satisfying. Just like real life, but I digress. The answer of what's holding the proverbial roof of the world from falling on top of us all is contradiction. We're governed not by coherence, but by competing impulses, by political, economical, and moral frameworks that cancel each other out, and yet somehow still coexist, not just globally, but inside each of us. First, we have the dichotomy of freedom against security. We want freedom of movement, of speech, of choice, but the moment crisis hits, be it a pandemic, a terrorist attack, a riot, we demand security. We want borders closed, streets patrolled, surveillance increased. We applaud emergency powers, then wonder why they linger long after the emergency ends. The truth is we have become addicted to both, and the more we get of one, the more we crave the other. That's not just cognitive dissonance, dear listeners. That's civilizational schizophrenia. Then we have another dichotomy, nationalism versus interdependence. Most of us love our nations and appreciate our cultures. We praise sovereignty. We want to, quote unquote, take back control. But try building a smartphone without rare earths from Africa and Chinese tech. Try heating your home without Russian gas or Middle Eastern oil. Try running a modern economy without global logistics. We are interdependent by design. But politically we live in denial. Nationalist rhetoric sells. International reality is complicated, but it ends up biting you. So we campaign with the former and govern with the latter. The result? Disillusionment. The people feel lied to, and they're not necessarily wrong. Then we have liberal democracy going head-to-head against technocratic control. We tell ourselves we live in democracies, but how many of our decisions are made by unelected bodies? Central banks, EU commissions, Supreme Courts, and most recently, algorithms. Public policy today is often designed not in parliaments, but in think tanks, in lobbying firms, and in corporate boardrooms. Even when we vote, we often vote within constraints. Constraints set by markets, by ideologies, by treaties, by economic dogma, or by what the algorithm decides we should see. This isn't totalitarianism. It's something far more subtle and less satisfying. And perhaps more dangerous, consequentially. Legitimacy without sovereignty and participation without power. That's what it is. Then we have prosperity versus sustainability. We all want infinite growth on a finite planet. Yeah, we want electric vehicles, but we don't want to mine the cobalt. We want green energy, but we protest wind farms. We want to save the planet as long as we don't have to change our habits. Every climate summit ends in applause. Every climate crisis ends in excuses. Then we have another dichotomy, digital efficiency versus human meaning. We have never ever been more efficient, never more connected, never more monitored. But we have also never been more anxious, more isolated, more unsure of who we are and what we stand for. We've outsourced memory to machines, identity to algorithms, meaning to platforms. The modern human is surrounded by tools of empowerment and yet feels powerless. And he doesn't necessarily feel it wrong. These contradictions aren't just philosophical. They're not a philosophy student's exercise while being drunk. They're structural. They paralyze policymaking because they paralyze our ways of thinking, both collectively and individually. They fragment our societies. They give rise to populism, apathy, and extremism all at once. And they leave us unprepared for the shocks to come. After that cheerful note, let's turn our gaze homeward to Europe, a continent once described as the lighthouse of human rights, diplomacy, and post-war reconciliation. A continent that turned fields of blood into boardrooms of bureaucracy, for better or worse. A continent that replaced tanks with treaties, that dreamed of unity without uniformity, and yet today, still, Europe feels rudderless. We speak of strategic autonomy, but we rely existentially on our American friends for their security guarantees. Without Washington, NATO is a slogan. Without the US Navy, the freedom of navigation, which we discussed in a previous episode, is non-existent, and without it, the corridors of international trade are gone. European trade resulting in being a hostage to pirates, choke points, and regional bullies. We call for sovereignty, but we cannot defend our own borders, be they physical, digital, or ideological, at least not without extraordinary amounts of external help. We speak of economic strength, but we've deindustrialized ourselves into vulnerability. Energy policy used to be tied to Moscow. Technology policy ties us to Silicon Valley. Raw materials tie us to Africa, and consumer goods tie us to China. Our supply chains are global, but our strategy is local and short-term. That's not resilience, that's magical and wishful thinking. We speak of values, but compromise them the moment they become inconvenient. We sanction autocrats on Monday and sign gas deals with them on Tuesday. We denounce right and left-wing extremism, but we let our algorithms amplify them. We champion green policies but outsource emissions to the developing world. We speak of federalization, but we are terrified of the question. What kind of union do we really want? Is it a superstate with real defense, fiscal and foreign policy powers? Is it the United States of Europe based on the American model? Or is it a loose confederation of sovereign nations sharing currency but not necessarily destiny? Right now we live in an uncomfortable middle, a system too centralized to be truly democratic and too fragmented to be truly effective. And when the crisis hits, we see the costs. During COVID, every capital looked inward. Borders went up, mask diplomacy began, vaccine nationalism took root, the spirit of Schengen vanished overnight. During the Ukraine war, defense spending soared, but coordination lagged. Ammunition shortages, procurement chaos, strategic ambiguity. The European Defense Union remains a slogan on a PowerPoint slide. What's missing is not capacity. Europe, for all its faults, is still rich. Europe, for all its faults, is still rich. It's still educated. It's still relatively technologically advanced, although we lost the cutting edge decades ago. What's truly missing is conviction. Conviction that we are more than a market, that we are, or could be, a political civilization. That the post-war experiment isn't just about avoiding the past, but shaping the future. The European dilemma is simple. Together we could be a superpower. Alone, we are bargaining chips. And the rest of the world knows it, make no mistake. China negotiates with Berlin. The US prefers London. Russia fears NATO, not the EU. Africa listens to Paris, not Brussels. And the Middle East sees us as indecisive at best. This is the tragedy of Europe today. Capable but hesitant. Ambitious but unsure. Awake but afraid of its own shadow. A sleeping giant, not for lack of power, but for lack of purpose. Let's discuss the dichotomy, the final dichotomy of us, of the collective West, between civilization and collapse. In the end, we are not protected by walls, by treaties, or by algorithms. We are protected by the stories we believe in. We are protected by the stories we believe in, by contracts we choose to honor, by the silent trust between stranger and stranger that says we're part of something greater. Something worth defending. But what happens when that trust fades? When the story collapses? When the contract is breached? Not by others, but by ourselves. That's when civilization doesn't fall. No, that would be too dramatic. It just simply dissolves. Not in fire, but in forgetfulness. Not with screams, but with a deafening silence. So ask yourselves, as the world re-enters an age of hard choices, who writes your story? Who defines your fears? Who benefits from your confusion? Because between order and collapse, there is only one thin line, and that line, dear viewer, is you. Hobbes warned us that when fear replaces reason, people will trade liberty for protection, and often end up with neither. He believed only a powerful state could hold back chaos, and I'm not saying necessarily he is wrong, but maybe, just maybe, today the Leviathan is no longer a king or a government. Maybe it's us, the collective will to believe in something beyond fear. Maybe what holds civilization together isn't force, but memory. Not obedience, but meaning. Thank you. This has been Realpolitik Confidential After Hours Episode 1, and I have been your host, Alex Crisan. Stay awake, stay aware, stay human, and above all else, stay safe out there.